Hi, this is Daniel Alpine, animation historian, and welcome to a new episode of Animation Look Back. This episode will be a little different. First off, this is the first two-parter of the series. This is part one. Part two will follow soon. But also, this is part history lecture and part film review. Last month's and last weekend, I had the fortunate opportunity to see the new traditional animated feature film, The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie. What any fan of the Looney Tunes would tell you, this particular film is very, very important to the franchise. There's no need to lecture about the history of the Looney Tunes because that's a different story. But long story short, the classic theatrical Looney Tunes cartoon series ran from 1930 to 1969. Even after the original theatrical run, the popular and iconic characters, which includes Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Tweety Bird, Sylvester, Wile E. Coyote, and the Roadrunner, and various others, would still be in the public conscience due to their airings on television. But the characters' venture into feature films is a different and also very interesting story. It all started when Warner Brothers' top cartoon star, Bugs Bunny, first appeared in two live action movies in the 1940s. But these were short appearances. But it wasn't until 1975 that the Looney Tunes would be the actual center of a feature film, Bugs Bunny Superstar. The movie was a documentary about the history of the Looney Tunes, and what it was a mixture of different classic cartoons and 30 minutes worth of interviews with the classic directors of the cartoons, which included Tex Avery and Bob Clampett. Film legend Orson Welles provided the narration of the film. 4 years later, Chuck Jones would direct a new all animated Looney Tunes movie, the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie. The entire purpose of the film was to celebrate the then 50th anniversary of the Looney Tunes franchise. The movie had a very simple plot, which was Bugs Bunny talking to the audience about the concept of chase and comedy, and a different classic cartoon will be presented, either in full or abridged, and it would all lead up to a special 15-minute Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner cartoon, which was a mixture of different scenes from different cartoons. The Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie has a distinction of the first animated film to be screened at the New York Film Festival. Well, the film proved to be a success, and thus, five additional Looney Tunes package films were produced. What's interesting is that each film was different in terms of the structure. The next one, which was the Looney Bugs Bunny movie from Friz Freleng, was divided into three acts, but not the traditional three-act structure of film. The different acts were different stories designed to present the classic Looney Tunes cartoons, with a few additional animation to link it all into one story. For the third one, it was an attempt to tell a sort of single narrative. In Bugs Bunny's third movie, 1001 Rabbit Tales, Bugs and Daffy took jobs as booksellers for a company called Rambling House. What the plot was Bugs and Daffy traveling the world to sell books, and a classic cartoon would be thrown in as part of the story. After a total of three movies about Bugs Bunny, it was soon decided to let Daffy Duck have the spotlight in Daffy Duck's Fantastic Island. Daffy and Speedy Gonzales were trapped on a desert island and soon stumble upon a magical wishing well, which was a plot device to present classic cartoons. The very last Looney Tunes package film was Daffy Duck's Quackbusters, which was an attempt to tell one story but still threw in a classic cartoon as part of the plot. What was important about this film was that it was the very last Looney Tunes production that veteran voice actor Mel Blanc did before his death in 1989. After a few years of newly produced television specials and continuing reruns on television, as well as new theatrical cartoons, it was soon decided to let the Looney Tunes star in a new original theatrical movie. And that film would be the 1996 classic Space Jam. The roots of this classic 1990s film was from a series of television commercials that Bugs Bunny starred in, where he teamed up with basketball superstar Michael Jordan. When the commercials proved to be a success, it was thought that the concept was strong enough for a full length film, which Warner Brothers was at first unsure of, but soon put into production because, well, to sell new merchandise. While Space Jam was a commercial success, opinions of the film continue to be, well, rather divided. Obviously, the film proves to be a real kick for kids and basketball fans, but fans of the Looney Tunes have heavily criticized it for being disrespectful to the classic cartoons, in particular, how it tried to rebrand the characters and make them contemporary, and also the unusual story was a source of criticism. But 7 years later, a new Looney Tunes movie that was intended to be, quote, the anti Space Jam was released. That film would be Looney Tunes Back in Action. From director Joe Dante, the director of the classic film Gremlins, Looney Tunes Back in Action was intended to be more respectful to the old cartoons, while the critical reception was slightly better than Space Jam, and it was considered an overall better Looney Tunes film. The reviews were still mixed. What was a source of criticism was the quote, disjointed and hyperactive story. But it should be noted that Joe Dante didn't intend to tell a strong narrative. Instead, the film was to focus on comedy. Well, perhaps critics didn't understand that. The film hardly had any marketing, and thus it tanked at the box office. But fortunately, the characters were kept alive through new television productions that were considered hit or miss, and one in particular was considered controversial, and the less that is talked about it, the better. And there were a handful of direct to video films. In 2021, which was 25 years since the characters competed in a high stakes basketball match, the awaited sequel to Space Jam was released, this time starring the new basketball superstar LeBron James. In a slight contrast to the last two films, the reviews for this were, well, to be blunt, bad. I saw it in theaters and I can see what the criticism was. It was because the film focused more on showing off whatever intellectual properties Warner Brothers has, which includes DC Comics, Harry Potter, Casablanca, The Matrix, the original King Kong, and the Iron Giant, and well, you name it. Seriously, it was as if the film was to be a feature length commercial for the Warner Brothers streaming service Max. The film flopped because it was released during COVID, and it was simultaneously released in theaters and on Max, which affected its chances at the box office. But now the Looney Tunes have finally have a proper and better feature film adventure that will be discussed in the next video, because that's not all, folks.